outside? What do you think? You go outside? What's wrong? It was wet? Good morning. Welcome back to Disabled Farm School. I'm Rachel. It's raining. What's up, pup? You wanna lay down? Juniper hates the rain and refuses to go outside to go to the bathroom in it. So we tried going for a walk, just a short one, and she was miserable the whole time, stopping every 3 feet. And I learned that my raincoat is missing and the poncho that I keep in the car for just such an eventuality is no longer waterproof. So of course we came back inside and I rode my bike to work. While getting Juniper some exercise by walking her indoors. Luckily, I have a bunch of fermentation projects that have been waiting for me to get stuck inside for a day. So we're gonna work on those today. I feel very corny and weird this morning. I mean, I'm always corny and weird, let's be very clear. Maybe it's because all the corn seedlings came up, so I'm extra corny. Exhibit 597. So fermentation projects that have been waiting for me, and frankly I've been neglecting a little bit, are I've got milk kefir grains, which I want to try using to make milk kefir and coconut kefir. It's pronounced kefir, by the way, but I was raised drinking kefir, and in my mind, since I was, 3 years old, the word is kefir, so I'm probably gonna keep calling it that. I'm sorry. I'm a little foggy. The weather's a little foggy. I've got some milk kefir grains, that I want to use for dairy milk, and I want to try them in coconut milk. I have a little bit of a coconut milk kefir that I love from a company where my folks live that I brought back in a suitcase, and I want to use that to inoculate a coconut milk kefir and use some of the grains as well. I've got a new kombucha SCOBY because my old one died a painful death while I was out of town. I think I'll do a black tea and a green tea. I've got honey from my neighbor across the street, new honey, and I've got a lot of it. So I think we're gonna start some Mead, which is honey wine. Oh, I'm gonna make yogurt because I'm running out of yogurt. Might get the sourdough starter going depending on how much time we have and how much energy I have. I'm definitely feeling very slow and sleepy with the rain. Not that you'd know it to listen to me, because as we know, I like to talk like I have energy, especially when I don't. I feel like there's a ferment I'm forgetting. Oh, I made a list. Kefir, coconut kefir, kombucha, mead, yogurt. No, that's all of them. Okay. Let's get our supplies. So we're gonna start with the kombucha because it's gonna take the longest from start to finish to get the water cool. We start with just making tea with sugar, and once it's completely room temperature, then we can add our little friend, the kombucha SCOBY. SCOBY stands for Symbiotic Community of Bacterial Bacteria and Yeast? I think so. As you know about me, if you've watched this channel literally at all, I love doing a bunch of starts of fermentation projects in the morning on a day when I have some energy. I don't have a ton. And then the microbes do the next part. I think that is such a cool way to garden indoors and fits really well with people who have dynamic access to projects, and whether that's because of your health or because you've got kids and you've got that 1 hour window or whatever it is, I think this is a really fun way to collaborate with other organisms and also create and prepare food that will store for longer and is good for most of us. Not everybody. There's some people who fermented foods can irritate their existing issues, but for a lot of people, fermented foods are really good for us. So this came from Etsy. There are shops on Etsy where you can order fermentation starts, and they send them in a little triple bagged thing. They set it up so it'll survive the mail really well, and then you pop it in the fridge and you use it. I'm gonna make green tea and black tea, and I have to get a little bit creative here because I realize the teas that I'm using are loose leaf, and I've got one tea strainer, and none of my usual tall mason jars are available. So I'm using this antique bean pot, which is usually I would use for a ferment that needed a bigger surface area that was collecting wild yeast. This is an existing set of microbes, so we don't need that surface area, but it has a lot of volume and it was sitting on a shelf collecting dust. However, it has a very wide mouth, which means that the tea strainer may or may not stay. Oh no, we're good. Okay, so for this one, I'm gonna do black tea. This is from my local tea shop, and it's tea that's getting a little bit old. So it will make a slightly weaker tea, which I prefer for my kombucha because I tend to forget about it and let it overbrew, and then it gets too caffeinated. You really only need to brew it as long as you would brew a regular cup of tea, and just put sugar in there. They're gonna eat the sugar as well as the tannins in the tea. And some of the caffeine will get dissolved. So, you know, do with that what you will. All right. There are ways that you can look up recipes and get really precise about this, but you don't need to for food safety reasons other than if you're very sensitive to caffeine. So I just estimate, and you need to make sure you put some sugar in there because otherwise they will not have anything to eat. So I'm gonna let that brew for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna move to green tea in this other container and add sugar to the first one, and then I'm gonna put them aside, and if I can find a trivet, I might even put them in the fridge to cool faster. While that's brewing, I'm gonna feed the sourdough starter, and I realized I don't have enough milk to make kefir and yogurt, so I'm gonna skip the yogurt, and I'm going to, let me think about my schedule. Yeah, I'm gonna make some bread dough. So sour. So let's talk about sourdough for a second. Again, you can look up recipes. I have a particular one that I love for bread because I think it is the simplest one I've found that is it's a stretch. It's a no knead, like stretch over many hours and then let the dough rest. And I find some of the recipes out there really confusing if you have any kind of, I don't know, brain fog or just trouble focusing on a recipe that's more than a page long. So the other thing a lot of people are super fastidious about with their sourdough is feeding it every day and then tossing out the discard, meaning that they have too much sourdough starter, so they're composting or throwing out perfectly good starter. I don't really like doing that because I have a thing about wasting food, and also I think it gets expensive personally. Flour's not that expensive, but if you're using nice quality stuff, or if you're making a sourdough starter out of something other than wheat flour, it can get really expensive. You need to make a gluten-free sourdough starter. I think you can do that because I think I've done it before. Look it up. I made one entirely with oat flour before that were from gluten-free oats. I keep my sourdough starter in the fridge and I feed it once every week or so. And when it gets big, I make bread. I'd like to make bread every week. Currently, I'm not really able-bodied enough of the time to do that consistently. I have about 10 good days out of the month and about 17 bad ones, the month being not a real month, but my body's month. This works really well for me. If you leave it too long, it will run out of stuff to eat, and, you know, when I say too long, I mean I left for 6 months once, and that's when it died. The water on top, which will smell very tangy and may look almost purple, is not dangerous. That's just what it does when it's It's like part of the byproducts of the fermentation. If you don't like that level of sour, you can pour it off and add more water. I think it's kind of cool. So I'm going to split this. I'm going to feed it in the jar and I'm going to feed it in my bread bowl. Tally ho. Oh, and when you feed it, it's equal parts flour or whatever your grain, whatever type of flour, and water, preferably slightly warm water. The way you test it to make sure it's not too hot so it won't kill the microbes is you run it on the inside of your wrist, and if it feels hot on the inside of your wrist, it's too hot. It should feel neutral. All right, here we go. The spoon fits in the jar. So the sourdough is gonna go sit aside until it's really bubbling, which hopefully will happen today, but if it doesn't, we'll leave it out overnight. And I said oat, and do it in the morning. Now that that's done, I'm gonna swap my tea here. Let's see, will it work? Oh, it'll also work in this one, sweet. All right, get some green tea in this one and get sugar into this one and get it in the fridge. Oh, that smells so good. Nice. I'm using a jasmine. I don't love other types of green tea, but I love jasmine. And I haven't made a kombucha with a green tea in a long time, but I really like it. It's milder on the caffeine and it has all the green tea benefits, and even green tea that I don't enjoy makes a nice kombucha, but this is some really nice jasmine my friend bought accidentally when she meant to buy plain green tea and gave to me, and I'm excited to drink it as kombucha. Oh, sugar. Brown sugar in the black tea and regular sugar in the green tea. If you've never made kombucha before and you are trying it, a thing to know is that you can use sugar, you can use brown sugar, you can't use artificial sweeteners because then there's nothing for the microbes to eat. And you can't use honey. Yeah, honey is antimicrobial. In fact, it's great for wound care when you're in a pinch. I use it to wash my face. It's great for the end of the day face wash. It's really powerful stuff. And so it can inhibit the growth of the SCOBY, the microbes in the kombucha. So unless you are using a recipe, because some people have adapted their SCOBYs to honey, but unless you're using a recipe or you know what you're doing, I wouldn't start there. I would start with regular sugar. If you can't have sugar, see if you can find a kombucha recipe that is really precise about timing and amounts of sugar, and that way most of the sugar should be gone by the time you're ready to drink the kombucha. I forgot how good brown sugar smells. Whew. Thank you for hanging out with me this morning. This is a really cozy morning. This is like what I would prefer to be doing on a rainy morning anyway, so yeah. How are you doing? Let me know in the comments. Are you having an okay morning or rough one? Things are not great right now, nationally and globally, for a lot of us. So just sending lots of love and care and safety your way. And hopefully something joyful, even if it's just this video. Let us stir the sugar. I think the part of me that just loves the feeling of stirring a cauldron is also really into fermentation. It's like the bubble, but it's not toil and trouble, it's food and fun, which doesn't rhyme, which is why it wasn't in the original. Once the sugar is completely dissolved, I will pop this into the Friginator. One note about these vintage bean pots and generally vintage crockery, it's hard to tell how old a piece of vintage crockery is, and there are glazes on some old vintage crockery that contain lead. That's just a thing to know. I don't really know what to do about it. I'm not particularly worried about it. I've had these for years. So if you know what to do about it, let me know. There might be ways to know by color or type of glaze. I just don't know. To the fridge. Ooh, that's hot. I don't know why I thought it wouldn't be. Woo, there we go. And then let's check on the jasmine, see how it's smelling. Oh, it smells so good. I don't want to over brew it because it's jasmine. It's such a delicate tea, but I do want there to be enough that they really, the microbes are happy, you know. All right, let's finish up this other kombucha and then we'll try the next ferment. Okay, so I am using a recipe. This is actually a recipe for Tej, which is Ethiopian style honey wine. It's from Wild Fermentation by Sandra Katz. I don't totally understand the difference between Tej and Mead. It might be about how long you age it. I'm not sure. It just might be two names for the same thing from different parts of the world because honey wine has been made in many parts of the world and continues to be. I used to work at a farm down the street from a place called the Meadery, where they had many types of mead in a little tasting room. And it was actually just a bar, but it only had mead, different types of mead. And it was really cool. It's fun to go at the end of the day with the other folks from the farm. And that was in suburban California. So, you know, mead is many places. Tej is many places. So basically, from my understanding, I'm just mixing volume-wise 1 part honey to 4 parts water. Yeah, 1 part honey to 4 parts water. I'm going to mix it until the honey is completely dissolved and put it aside with a cloth over it for a few days. I'm going to stir it when I think of it and try to stir it twice a day. And after 3 or 4 days, it will collect wild yeast and it'll get bubbly. It'll have like a froth, almost like a head on it, like a beer or something. That's when I'm going to put it into an airlocked jug. And an airlock is something you can get at like a brewery store, you can order online. I've also just used a balloon over it, and the thing with the balloon is you have to off-gas it. So you have to pull out the edge and squeeze out the gas every now and then, but it's visually pretty obvious when you need to do that because the balloon starts to blow up. I have used other things that are sort of like balloons before, like a rubber glove or other rubber things, and they did work. You just want to make sure they don't have any kind of lubricant on them. Okay, then once it's in the airlocked jug, I'm going to leave it for a few weeks. This says 2 to 4, but you can drink it basically as soon as the bubbling slows down, or you can age it. And to age it, my understanding, I think that's when you then put a cork in it instead of an airlock, because it shouldn't be off-gassing as much, and you let it sit for many months. And that may be the difference between Tej and Mead, if I'm remembering right. I've made both. They're both really good. When you drink it fresh, it's like much more, it's somewhere between a beer and a wine, but it's not hoppy. It has no hops, right? So it's very sweet. It's very frothy. It's quite alcoholic. It's really fun. And when you age it longer, it's less bubbly and has that more wine flavor and scent and almost texture. That's really sort of smoothness. You can add fruit or herbs to it. I think at the beginning is when I've done it. I made a Tulsi mead one year that was really, really good. It's a little early for that. Nothing is up that I would like to flavor the mead with. Let's make some mead, shall we? Cauldron number 2. that should do it. It's all dissolved. It smells incredible. And now I'm gonna cover it and leave it on my little fermentation counter over here. What did I do with the, oh, there it is. And the rubber band is, where have you gone, rubber band? Here it is. There we go. Last but not least, let's make some kefir. Kefir. Oh, and just a note, because I may or may not do this on the camera, since it's going to take a little while for the tea to cool for the kombucha. So I have my SCOBY here. It's a little, almost like a little puck of tea-colored slime. But SCOBYs grow in layers, and so I'm going to peel it into two, and I'm going to put one in each of my teas that I made once they're room temperature, and then I'm going to leave them out covered with a cloth to bubble and for the microbes to eat the sugar and the tea. And it's probably going to take a little while because it's a small SCOBY and I'm splitting it. So I'll just taste them, and when they start to taste carbonated and tangy and less like tea and sugar, then I will move on to bottling them and putting them in the fridge. You can do a second fermentation in the bottle. I've never really gotten the hang of that, but I might try it this time. People will put like a little extra sugar into the bottle and let that ferment out on the counter closed for a little while before putting it into the fridge. And that, because it's closed, increases the carbonation because the gas can't escape. So I might try that this time as well. But just so you know what to do with this thing if you are following along with this. Let's do this because I need to feed the hens. I took the kefir grains out of their little baggie last night and put them in some milk. And the idea is when you get them to rinse them in milk, I don't love wasting the milk. It doesn't smell like it's actually fermented fully yet. Yeah, it just tastes like mild kefir. So I'll give them, I'll rinse this off and give them new milk just to get them going. And then let them sit for 24 hours on the fermentation shelf. The thing about kefir grains is that they need to be fed pretty frequently. So I've done it before and I just ran out of milk and I ran out of energy for it. So that's why I'm interested in trying the coconut milk, because coconut milk stores, it's canned. And I think that could be a much more long-term, like, sustainable ferment to have in the house. So I'm gonna rinse them in milk and then I'm gonna split them. Oh, and I'm gonna put them in the old coconut kefir container that has a little bit left in it with new coconut milk. Yes, okay. Okay, friends, well, that has exhausted me. I don't know if I'm sleepy because of the rain or I'm starting to enter my next flare. I'm hoping it's the former. My dog is over here with her head up a piece of furniture, which is her favorite position. I'll see if she'll let me show you on my way out. I'm gonna put these friends away on the fermentation counter, clean up here, feed the chickens, do my physical therapy, and edit this video so I can send it out to all of you. I hope you are finding some delightful cauldrons to stir in your day, and I will see you next time here on Disabled Farm School, where gardening and fermentation and all of those fun things are for everybody, and we're just trying to figure out how together.